In the dead of night, when the moon is high, and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry, and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. And tonight's topic is the Hampton Court and Warwick Castle. We're going to go over to the old country for a bit and explore two subject matters tonight. I do want to put a disclaimer out. At the time we're taping this, we in our area are under a tornado watch and a severe thunderstorm warning. So there may be noise, there may be alarms occasionally. We're going to try to edit out what we can, but just be aware of the fact that you may have some bit of contamination. So tonight's guests are Jennifer Byrne, our research manager and podcast producer.
Good evening.
And Heather Lawson, our case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
Alrighty, so why don't you start us off, Jennifer, with Hampton Court.
So, Hampton Court Palace is a Grade 1 listed royal palace in the London borough of Richmond upon Thames. It's about 19 kilometers southwest of London, and it's actually on the River Thames itself. The building of the palace began in 1514 by Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. He was the chief minister for Henry VIII. In 1529, Wolsey fell from favor, and the cardinal gave the palace to the king as kind of a, hey, don't kill me.
Yeah. Consolation gift.
Yeah. It didn't really do much good. I think Wolsey ended up losing his head anyway. So at that time, it was more kind of a country hunting estate type. It wasn't really a palace, that sort of thing. But it was Henry's most favored residence. And after acquiring the property, he arranged for it to be enlarged so that it could accommodate his courtiers and all of his entourage. Court. In the early 1960s, King William III's massive rebuilding and expansion work took place. He intended it to rival the Palace of Versailles.
Wow.
The Palace of Versailles, right? The Palace of Versailles also started as a hunting lodge out in the country until King Louis XIV, maybe, I don't know. Yes. I can't remember. I think
that sounds right.
Took over and really upgraded Versailles, and so William III wanted to kind of match what had happened at Versailles.
Sure.
So much of the Tudor palace that King Henry VIII had built was destroyed in order to make work for William's work. This work ceased in 1694, leaving the palace in two distinct, contrasting architectural styles. You have the domestic Tudor and Baroque of Henry VIII, and then the Tudor style of Henry VIII, and then the Baroque style of William III. So
unique decorating.
Yeah, very, very unique. And I have been to Hampton Court before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it is such a distinct difference. You know when you leave Henry's, and you know when you're headed into Williams.
Wow.
Oh, we're losing power. Okay.
Yeah, this may be fun.
This may be fun, yeah. So anybody who's familiar with Tudor design really knows that sort of stucco and wattle look with the black beams,
Yes.
And very angular looking.
Yes.
And William III's design is pink bricks, very symmetrical. Wow. What's on one side is on the other side.
Yes.
And it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
And then King George was the last monarch to reside in the palace. Within 6 months of coming into ownership, Henry VIII, like I said, was starting to rebuild and expanding. His court consisted of over 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think, and all told, after William put his extension on, there's over 1,600 rooms in the palace now. Yeah. So King Henry VIII's 1,000 people. He had 60 houses and palaces. And of course, this was his favorite. So in order to transfer Hampton Court to a principal residence, they had to build kitchens. So that was one of the first things they added on, was kitchens. And that happened in 1529.
Did they not have kitchens to begin with?
No, I mean, they had a kitchen.
Just not the size
but
that would
yeah,
maintain,
not kitchen.
Couldn't support all those people.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we were there, the kitchen that Henry VIII created is massive. It's got those, the typical fireplaces you can actually walk into and stand into.
Yes.
There are 2 of them, if I remember correctly, in Henry VIII's kitchen.
Wow.
And stacks of wood piled high. It's just massive. But right behind that is where the real action of and I'm going to lose my place, but this is so interesting.
Yes.
The real action happens is there are little apartment rooms, what you would call them, like storage cellars.
Okay.
One for one type of produce, one for root vegetables, one for dairy, one for milks and creams, one for meats. And there's this whole cobble entryway that you can just imagine picturing carts from the farms coming in through the gate, meeting the master of the house, that who's in charge of all the properties, the butler kind of thing, what butlers would have become. And all the commerce coming and going down that back alleyway. That was probably the most used.
Oh, yeah. Far
Busiest,
more than the main entrance, yes.
Without a doubt, yes. And every day was coming through there. And just to walk down those streets and see this. And I've got some pictures, so
neat.
I'll go ahead and put some of those photos on our Facebook page.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
So you guys can see what I'm talking about. But that was amazing. And then from the kitchens, there's another little courtyard, kind of a covered hallway, but it's sort of outdoor feel.
Okay.
And then you walk into the Great Hall area and the residential areas. So it's really kind of majestic.
Now, what year were you there?
I was there in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, June of 2016.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since I've been there, so it was back in the early 2000s. But I never once got. A lot of the problem was that was the first time I went. It's always bad because you want to see everything, and you spend a day getting over there and a day getting out of jet lag, and then you turn around and you've got 4 days to try to see an entire country in.
And it's not possible.
No. I mean, it'd be like flying into New York and wanting to hit 15 things around from the West Coast east, or it's just impossible.
Right.
And the first time over, we hit most of the big stuff. Rosslyn Chapel. We traveled to the Templars Chapel in London. We, got to see the Eye, Parliament, Big Ben. We went through all the usual tourist things, the Tower and so forth. But the next time I go over, I'm going to take Heather because she's never been. So I think we're going to try to step in and see this guy. I've never seen Henry's Palace.
This is absolutely well worth it. I mean, you need a whole day.
Yes.
You need a whole day. We were there half a day, and there goes the alarms.
Stop us. All right, listeners, we're taking a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chief Lawson with Spirit Ghost to Ghost and Spirit Indiana Paranormal. We would like to invite you to the Fort Wayne Paracon at 216 East Washington Boulevard, Fort Wayne, Indiana, at Freemasons Hall, September 29th and 30th. Please come join us. Tickets are reasonable. You can get those online, and certainly we'll have a good time. There's some notable celebrities coming. We have Grant Wilson, Dustin Perry, and Chris Williams, not to mention Brian Murray, and as we say, Sean Pittman, poor Sean. Dave Spinks will be there, Jenny Flack, and Dana Strickler. So please take the time to come out and enjoy. And most importantly, Spirit Indiana Paranormal will be there. We'll be on site. We'll be shooting a episode of Ghost to Ghost. So you don't want to miss that. Again, tickets are very reasonable. They can be found online. If you go online to FW Paracon, Fort Wayne Paracon, this is a first for Indiana. The first time for Fort Wayne Paracon. First time for a Paracon in Indiana. So please come out and see us. Come out and see me. We'll be at the booth. We'll have the entire group there. Thank you so much.
And now we return to our broadcast.
Okay, so building of the kitchens quadrupled the size in 1529, enabling the king to provide for his entire court. The architect of King Henry's new palace followed a design set by Wolsey. It's perpendicular Gothic-inspired Tudor with restrained Renaissance ornament. The hybrid architecture was to remain almost unchanged for nearly a century. And then strong classical influences were added from Italy when the Stuart kings took over. Between 1532 and 1535, Henry added the Great Hall, which, by the way, is absolutely amazing.
Oh, I can only imagine, yeah.
Just amazing. And a tennis court. The Great Hall has carved hammer beam roof.
Mm-hmm.
During the Tudor times, this was the most important room of the palace.
Wow.
The king would dine there, seated at the table upon a raised dais. The hall took 5 years to complete, and he was so impatient for the completion that the masons were compelled to work throughout the night by candlelight.
Wow.
Now, King Henry VIII is one of my mother's fascinations. So, of course, that's why we went.
Well, he's a colorful character. Yeah.
He's a very interesting character. And her love of British royal history has rubbed off on me. And so I'm just fascinated by all of ancient history. And I've just been looking into the Plantagenets, Henry II, Richard III, and John. And then into the War of the Roses, which is how we got onto the Warwick Castle next.
Yeah.
But there is one piece from Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII.
Yes.
Catherine of Aragon was his first wife. They were together 24 years before he annulled their marriage to Mary Anne Boleyn.
Yes.
But he had the whole hall and everything decorated with their crest, Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon.
Uh-huh.
And when they were annulled, he ordered everything to be destroyed of hers.
Yes.
One emblem was missed, and it is in the Great Hall.
Oh, wow.
And so Mom knew about that when we went over, so she goes, we have to find out where it is.
Yes.
And it's towards the entrance of the Great Hall. You can see it hanging up there, still carved in the wood.
Uh-huh.
Their crest, and it's just amazing.
Wow.
It's just really, really cool. So, of course, after Henry VIII died, his son Edward, he was 9 at the time, and Edward died when he was 15. And then Elizabeth I took over. Everybody knows Elizabeth I, right?
Sure.
Henry tried so hard to have a son because he didn't want a female to rule England, to be the queen.
Yeah.
And after everything he tried to do...
Ended up anyway.
Yeah. And Elizabeth was actually Anne Boleyn's daughter.
Yes.
So Anne lost her head, but looks like she got revenge in the end, right?
Yeah, yes,
right.
That's right.
So on the death of Elizabeth I in 1603, the Tudor period comes to an end. The Queen was succeeded by her first cousin twice removed, James I, the House of Stuart from Scotland.
Yep.
King James was succeeded in 1625 by his son, the ill-fated Charles I, who lost his head to Cromwell. Hampton Court was to become both his palace and his prison. It was also the setting for his honeymoon with his 15-year-old bride, Henrietta Marie, in 1625. Following King Charles's execution in 1649, the palace becomes the property of the Commonwealth and was presided over by Cromwell. Unlike former royal properties, the palace escaped relatively unscathed, probably because Cromwell was living there.
Well, yeah, you didn't want to touch.
Cromwell tried to dismantle everything.
Yes.
From the monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he melted down all
he
of the
was
crown
very
jewels.
much against the entire hierarchy of the monarchy.
Yes. So, but that's another story for another day, because that can get interesting. So, while the government auctioned everything else, the building was pretty much ignored. So after the Restoration, King Charles II and his successor James II visited Hampton Court, but largely preferred to reside elsewhere. By current French court standards, the Hampton Court was very old-fashioned now. In 1689, shortly after Louis XIV's court had moved permanently to Versailles, I was right, Louis XIV, okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That the palace's antiquated state was addressed. England had joint monarchs, William III and Mary II, and in months of their accession, they embarked on a massive rebuild project of Hampton Court. Mm-hmm. The intention was to demolish the Tudor palace a section at a time while replacing it with a huge modern palace in the Baroque style, retaining only Henry VIII's Great Hall. They were going to keep that.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's kind of the centerpiece. I mean, why not?
Yeah. So, architect Christopher Wren was called to draw the plans, and Christopher Wren is a very famous architect of that time.
I know that name, but I don't know what he. I know he's built other things or designed other things.
Right. So the plan was for a vast palace constructed around 2 courtyards, right angles around each other. Like I said, very symmetrical.
Yes.
Wren had designed a domed palace that resembled Versailles. While the facades were not as long as those of Versailles, they had similar, unstoppable, repetitive rhythms. And you really get that feel when you walk down that courtyard. Mm-hmm. There's an arch, there's an arch, there's an arch.
Yes.
And it goes all around all 4 sides with a fountain in the middle, in the center. The monotony is repeated as the facade turns the corner east to south. However, Hampton Court, unlike Versailles, is given an extra dimension by a contrast of the pink bricks and pale Portland stone. So it's a white and pink sort of combination.
Almost a mauve.
It is almost mauve-y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
During this work, half the Tudor palace was replaced, and Henry VIII's staterooms and private apartments have been lost. The new wings around the fountain court contained new state apartments, private rooms, one set for the king, one set for the queen. Since they were ruling monarchs conjointly, they had their own royal suites. And they were completely equal in value to reflect William and Mary's unique reign as joint sovereigns.
Sure.
I'm going to skip that part because that's a little boring.
Do you know I believe that's the only time in England's history they had ruling monarchs at the same time.
To my knowledge, it is.
I think that's the only one I'm aware of.
Yep, to my knowledge, it is.
Period, yes.
After the death of Queen Mary and King William lost interest in renovations, and the work ceased, which, thankfully, that means we still have
the rest of it.
We still have the front part of Henry VIII's palace. So, Hampton Court in 1702, King William fell off his horse, and he later died from those injuries at Kensington Palace. So he was succeeded by Queen Anne, who was his sister-in-law. She continued the decoration, the state apartments, and on Queen Anne's death in 1714, the Stuart dynasty comes to an end, and then the Hanover court takes over. King George I, King George II, the Hanovers, and that sort of thing. King George II was the last monarch to reside at Hampton Court. Under George I, only 6 rooms were completed in 1717, and then under George II and his wife Caroline, refurbishments took place. William Kent was the architect employed to design new furnishings and decors, and there's this great Queen's staircase. And again, I'll put a picture up of that. It's just absolutely magnificent. And today, all that area is open to the public.
Wow, very nice.
It's really massive and really amazing.
Well, folks, real quickly here, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chief Lawson with Spirit Ghost to Ghost and Spirit Indiana Paranormal. We would like to invite you to the Fort Wayne Paracon at 216 East Washington Boulevard, Fort Wayne, Indiana, at Freemasons Hall, September 29th and 30th. Please come join us. Tickets are reasonable. You can get those online, and certainly we'll have a good time. There's some notable celebrities coming. We have Grant Wilson, Dustin Perry, and Chris Williams, not to mention Brian Murray, and as we say, Sean Pittman, poor Sean. Dave Spinks will be there, Jenny Flack, and Dana Strickler. So please take the time to come out and enjoy. And most importantly, Spirit Indiana Paranormal will be there. We'll be on site. We'll be shooting a episode of Ghost to Ghost. So you don't want to miss that. Again, tickets are very reasonable. They can be found online. If you go online to FW Paracon, Fort Wayne Paracon, this is a first for Indiana. The first time for Fort Wayne Paracon. First time for a Paracon in Indiana. So please come out and see us. Come out and see me. We'll be at the booth. We'll have the entire group there. Thank you so much. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Ghost to Ghost. We are discussing tonight Hampton's Court, Henry VIII's Palace, and Warwick Castle. Welcome back.
All right. So in 1838, we're pretty much up to modern time. I know that sounds funny because, you know.
Yeah, 1838, most
to
people don't
us
say,
in the U.S., that's not modern times. But really,
this goes back in the 1400s. Yeah,
exactly.
We're up to modern time.
Exactly. Yeah. So Queen Victoria actually opened it up to the public. It kind of became on the what we consider a historical register. I think they call it, what was it called? Heritage England, I think, is the one who keeps it now. So it was open to the public. The funny thing is, though, they had tours like that in England. And the United States, we didn't have anything that had tours. Really, we had state parks national parks that hadn't even come about yet. Correct.
So there was very little things that they gave tours of. I mean, closest thing to a tour would be the exhibition or the World's Fair, and that was about it.
Right, yeah. So Queen Victoria wanted to keep it restored and preserved and saved, but the royalty at this time didn't use it. They were at Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace now at this point. And they let out apartments. They had the suites and the areas broken up into apartments, and they let out the apartments. And apartments were still being let out up until the 1960s.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually, people still do live in Hampton Court now. And again, I think that they are members of the historical societies, the Heritage England, who live on site to help maintain and keep up the property.
More of a staff kind of thing than it is actually an attraction.
Yeah. So now let's get maybe into the ghosts of Hampton Court. Let's follow that down. One little thing. I know everybody probably has a little thing about orbs, right?
Sure.
Orbs are pictures of dust, right? Or water droplets on the cameras, right?
Or bugs,
Or bugs. So I was telling you earlier how there was, between the kitchen and the Great Hall, there was that covered walkway.
Yes.
It kind of looks like it's outside, but it's covered.
Yes.
But it doesn't look like an inside furnishing of a home. It's cobbles and that sort of thing. When we were there on the tour, we were told that Catherine of Aragon, that was her favorite place to be because they threw a lot of estate dinners and royal dinners and things like that. And she was going back and forth, making sure things were happening in the kitchen and then into the Great Hall. And she was known to be in that area a lot.
Yes.
I took a photo of that area because I was all alone. There was nobody else with us. I don't know why I think Mom and Kara were still in the kitchen areas. I ended up in there alone, and I just it's kind of dark in here. This is a little, I took a picture.
Yes.
There's an orb in the picture.
There's an orb in the
There's an orb in the picture. I took a picture a little bit later on.
No orb.
There's no orb in the picture.
Orbs are such a touchy subject. And we get people that send us photos all the time. They go, the place is haunted, we've seen an orb. And yes, it is very difficult unless you're really well trained at it. And we've been doing this so long. I mean, we got over 30 years experience. When you start looking at these things, you can pick out the bugs, the dust, the orbs, and the difference. But nobody really knows what orbs are. My opinion always was they were balls of energy. Maybe even a spirit that could not fully manifest. But, it's kind of funny because I was on a haunted tour, a public tour, in South Carolina, in Charleston. And I'll never forget this because it was a great little tour. And the guy that went on it was fairly new. He'd only been doing tours about a week, and he was scared to death. And he wasn't real happy because they left him in places by himself. But the shirt he wore for the company was great. On the front of it, it told the name of the tours. On the back, it says, if you see me running, try to keep up. It's not part of the tour. And I tried to buy this shirt off this guy. I tried forever. I tried to give him $30 a shirt I was wearing to swap, and he wouldn't do it. So he kept going, no, dude, you're going to be in trouble. They'll fire me over this. He said he was very nervous, young lad. Well, it just so happens, Andrew, our chief of staff, he turned around and his daughter Caroline made me a wonderful glass. I've tried to thank her online as much as possible, and it actually says on the back, if you see me running, it's not part of the investigation. Try to keep up. And and of course that comes from a bomb technician, ordnance technician shirt, and that was something that was done in the military. If you see me running, try to keep up. And but I gotta admit though, some of those tours while we were on there, my daughter was with me. She was probably, now this daughter is in her 20s now. She was probably 8 or 9 then, and I had this wonderful Sony camera with an auto winder on it, and she says, "Dad, did you take a picture of them over in the corner?" And without even thinking, I swung it as fast as I could and started ripping off photos. And I got this wonderful photo. We use it in orientation, same as we use one we're going to talk about here at Hampton Court coming up. But I actually had like 19 different orbs in this photo, different sizes, colors. Yeah. Well, it's a prison, and where we were shooting, the cells they told us they were overcrowded. It just fit, and it kind of fit my theory about the energy. Yeah. One of our late founders, late in the fact he's never anywhere on time, not dead. That's Ed Adams, the late great Ed Adams. Yeah. Yeah, Ed hated orbs, and I used to always aggravate him over the orbs. And Heather actually made me a gift, and I was going to get one for Ed. Hang on. It's a glass bottle. It has an orb in it.
It's an orb in a bottle.
Orb in a bottle, and
that's hysterical.
Yeah. And so that's always been, I got him one just so I could aggravate him a little bit about it, because he would go ballistic, and his theory was, I'm not going to talk about orbs because orbs are, there's nothing there. Right. And I think to a certain degree that any subject you just say, hey, I'm not going to talk about, it isolates you from information you can't get. Exactly. So I always kind of disagreed with it. But it was always a fun humor back and forth of jesting. But
the funny thing is, I've been on ghost walks and ghost tours before, and you take photos and you come back and then there's orbs everywhere. There's dust particles and water particles and droplets everywhere. And you're like, okay, I can disclaim that. Sure. This photo, there is one single solitary
just the one.
orb. Yeah. Just the one. And it's not like there's a bunch of dust in the air. There's not a whole lot. Or there's not like water droplets in the air. Because there's just a single orb. Mm-hmm. So, interesting. Although, there are no stories of Catherine Aragon haunting Hampton Court. None.
Yes.
So, whether it was her or not, who knows? Whether it was even an orb or not,
on the other end,
who knows?
Could have been somebody else.
He did have 5 wives that died. Yep. The 6th one did outlive him, Catherine Parr. Good for you.
Yeah, maybe that was her getting even.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. So, let's talk about the first ghost that we suspect. And that would be Henry VIII's 3rd wife, Jane Seymour. Mm-hmm. She is reported to be a sad one, and it's no wonder, because Jane died the 24th October, 1537, 12 days after giving birth to Henry's male heir, Edward. She perished from post-birth complications, and it sent Henry into a spiral of grief that he really never recovered from. Catherine of Aragon, 24 years, she was his brother's former wife, which is how he ended up getting the annulment. Anne Boleyn was the 2nd wife. She was going to make him the heir, whatever.
Sure.
So much happened with Anne Boleyn, and then in comes Jane Seymour, who's just a quiet, well-liked, well-loved woman. And they really seem to have a bond. They really did. And she ends up giving him his male heir that he always wanted.
Time she was 24. How old do you know?
I do not know.
Okay. We could probably guess he's at least 15 years, if not more, older.
Oh, yeah.
At least, I would say almost 20 years old.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Jane Seymour and probably Anne Boleyn are your 2 most famous wives of Henry.
Yeah, Jane, because she gave the male heir. Yeah. But if he was married to Catherine of Aragon for 24 years, so that's going to put him, in his late 30s, early 40s?
Yeah, right around.
Yeah. About the time he's marrying Anne Boleyn. And he and Anne Boleyn were together a handful of years. Yeah. So he would have had to have been in his late 40s, somewhere around there. Yeah. And Jane was probably relatively young. Yeah. But Jane is known to be walking the staircase, the Silver Stick Stairs, which is near the room where she gave birth to Edward. And it was also the room where she would have died, because if I remember correctly, she never really left the childbed because she got the fever. She got the fever afterwards. And she's typically only seen on the anniversary of Edward's birth.
Okay.
So if you're interested in trying a residual. Yeah, exactly. So sometimes they say that they see a figure walking the palace clock court. Mm-hmm. It could be her, it could not. Let's check the weather there.
Yeah, one more time here. Okay, the weather is past us, folks, so that should help a lot.
Wonderful. So whether that's her in the clock court or not.
Good question.
Yeah, good question. Now, speaking of the clock court.
But, you know, she died at least in childbirth. To a certain degree, that compared to somebody else.
Well,
he dispatched.
If she hadn't have died,
she'd probably have been dispatched at some point.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? You think?
No, she gave him the heir he wanted.
Yeah. She gave him the boy that he wanted.
Yeah,
she did what he
that
asked,
could have been his last wife. He may not have had the other three. I really think when you look at into Henry VIII, and he really is fascinating. I mean, he really, really is fascinating. Actually, all of the Tudors are. Oh yeah. Really, how they came to power and everything. They had a
series. I never watched it, but it was on. I think Showtime for a while, called The Tudors, and it was a in-depth. I don't know how actual
and factual it is.
Yeah, because it had a lot of drama as well. But it was a series on for a while. I know Ed watched it. I was not quite as interested, but still, yes, the Tudors themselves were quite a
There is a
flamboyant.
fabulous podcast, and she breaks down all of the Tudor dynasty and all of their history and all the machinations between the Howards and the Seymours and the Tudors and life at court. And it's when you listen to it, you really understand what they were trying to do, and the real life Game of Thrones. Really is a real life Game of Thrones.
That's what's his name? I can't think of the guy that wrote Game of Thrones, and I was always a good
George R. Martin.
Martin, yes, I know he has a very unique name, and he actually used some of the Tudor period and some of the history as an inspiration, for Lord of the for the. For Fire and Ice. I mean, that was so. But
the period before the Tudors, the 100 Years' War.
Yes.
With the Earl of Warwick, which we'll get to the Warwick Castle, really cemented that feeling too. It really happened all over. But the clock court is kind of a square court just before you get into, when you come in the main gate, you come into this courtyard area.
And they call it that because there's a clock?
There's a clock there. Yes, there's a clock there.
Yeah.
One
Makes
of those
sense.
big,
That'll do it.
Tower type clocks. And then there's a fountain in the middle of that area. Mm-hmm. And that fountain could be filled with wine. And that's where all the merrymaking and the reveling went on. And you would fill your cup with the wine there in the fountains. And so debauchery went on in that court area. So it could be anybody in that clock court area. Yeah, it could be anybody. Sure. So, but speaking of the clock court area, there's something a little funny that happened there in 2003. And this ghostly figure made the international news.
Oh,
it sure did.
It did.
Yes, it did. Big
CCTV footage captured a rather unusual overnight happening at Hampton Court Palace. 3 nights in a row, cameras recorded the same fire door near the clock court being flung open. Security staff witnessed the door opening. No one was there. On the second night, a ghostly, cloaked figure in period dress steps out and then shuts the door. And they nicknamed him Skeletor.
Well, yeah. If you look at it, you get
that Skeletor vibe.
Yeah, you do.
I get sort of a long, gray-haired man in a cape, and he's got a cane. Looks like a walking stick coming out. I don't really know that I would put it as a Tudor period.
No, I always thought maybe because now is he coming out to the clock court?
Yes, he's coming out onto the clock court.
Isn't that where they did an execution at one point? I thought I read somewhere where that was.
That I did not come across.
Okay. Well, I kind of wonder, because to me, he always struck me as maybe an executioner, because they wore a lot of the cloaks.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a profession back then.
It was a profession back then, but I can't think of any reason he would be there. Now, if you saw something like that at the tower
that
without a doubt, you can call that an executioner.
Yeah.
This more looks like somebody who's trying to play a prank and scare people
Sure.
who are maybe already there.
Well, I mean, what I mean, certainly for somebody like myself, it's been a fireman. We're just natural born pranksters. We die and become a ghost. Oh my God, it's like falling into heaven itself. The things you could do. And this guy's going, oh boy, because right now there's 2 guys in security. They're sitting there watching this camera in the middle of the night, and the door opens again, and out comes this, and one of them looks there and goes, oh shit, Louie, look at there. This is going to be a problem. Yeah. What do you do?
You go check it out.
Yeah.
No, you go check it out.
I've been here longer than you. You go check it out. Yeah.
No, and nobody, 2003, nobody has yet come to forward and say, hey, guys, that was me. I got you all. Bazinga, right?
Yeah, and the odd thing is that it opened the doors several nights previous. I mean,
3 nights in a row.
Yeah, I mean,
3 nights in a row.
What was the symbolism there, and why? I mean, that just
and it hasn't happened yet again.
No. It has not. And if I remember correctly, and I could be completely erroneous, and I don't know how Hampton Court sets directional wise, but as you walk in to the clock court area and you're facing the fountain, off to your right in those apartment areas, the other side of that goes out onto a drive and then over to the Thames.
Okay.
And off to your left, you go up a little stairway into a door, and that's where you go into that hallway that I captured the photograph in. And then off to the left of that is the big kitchen, and then the what we'll call pantry area, because I don't know what it's called. But all of those little areas over there. And I think that the Skeletor of this clock tower, if I remember correctly, is over here on the right-hand side as you're facing the fountain just coming in. So it would have been somebody, who was in those apartments there staying as a guest.
Yeah. Well,
or part of the retinue.
Well, yeah, because you go back before Henry VIII, the question is, what was it then in that area? I mean, it was just,
It was Cardinal Wolsey's country retreat.
Yeah.
So it was just a little estate.
Easily been rooms then,
just kind of a little estate, So.
Yeah. It more than likely a guest. I think you may have pegged it right there. More than likely a guest.
More than likely a reveler, because lots of revelries happened out there during that time.
Yeah.
And it could have just been somebody who was, late at night trying to frighten or scare whatever drunk guys were still drinking in the fountain, right? Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So another apparition that is seen is the Grey Lady. The Grey Lady is thought to be a gal named Sybil Penn. She's known as the Grey Lady of Hampton Court. And there are several sightings of the Grey Lady reported in various areas of the castle. She was a servant of the Tudor monarchs. She nursed Prince Edward and Elizabeth I. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth I notoriously caught smallpox.
Yes.
And was very, very ill from smallpox. And it's supposed that Sybil Penn also contracted smallpox while she was caring for Elizabeth I and died of the smallpox. Her first sightings began in 1829, were the first reports of her ghost. And that just happened to be the same time that she was moved. Immediately after her grave was disturbed, noises started being reported. Some say they can hear a spinning wheel constantly throughout the court. Mm-hmm. And a search of the palace have revealed that an antique spinning wheel is there. Whether it's a coincidence or not, we don't know. But some of the places that she is said to haunt are the clock court.
Why was her grave disturbed? Did it ever say?
They moved her tomb.
Okay, I know, if you were a loyal...
It was during the renovation of Hampton Church.
Okay.
Yeah. And during that time, there were also...
inside of the...
Yes, it was inside that because in the Fountain Court area.
I know there was a church, chapel inside.
Yeah, so...
We would call it a chapel, they called it a church.
Right. In 1871, more graves were found in the court, the Fountain Court area, which is where William... and Mary's addition was added on that square that I told you about with the arches and the fountain. There were 2 bodies that were found in that area in 1871. Mm-hmm. And of course, when those were exhumed, things started happening again on those.
Okay.
So this white ghost that we said earlier could have been Jane Seymour roaming the clock court. This could actually be the Grey Lady, Sybil Penn.
Yes.
Or... it could be these 2 blokes from the previous church that were buried in the churchyard, the kirkyard, that were dug up in 1871. And they weren't purposely dug up; they were just accidentally found, and then they were reburied.
Quick fact. You know what the difference is between a church and a chapel? There's actually a difference. It's very interesting. Churches have assigned clergy. So in other words, they would have, especially in Catholicism, they would have a priest assigned to that church or that parish to service that parish. A chapel is simply built for any minister or a vicar or a priest
or
to
any
come
village
through there. And it's not, now there are some that are denominational, but the chapels aren't assigned a specific individual. And that's how the word chaplain came about, because chapels were considered very portable. So if you had a chaplain, he was a very portable religious man that went to different chapels to preach or to perform services. Just a quick little, run through there.
That's cool.
A little bit from my seminary days. So just thought I'd throw that one out.
That's
there.
Cool.
So,
well, speaking of churches and chapels,
yes,
I'm going to give you a little bit more history about the layout of the castle. I know it's hard to kind of picture this over a podcast, but so from the Great Hall area, there's another little area that you walk through, and this was covered in all tapestries, and the ceiling was embellished with all of these seals and crests and family whatnots. But the tapestries that were hanging over the walls would hide little nooks and doorways that the servants would slide in and out of, so they couldn't be seen coming through. So as you exited that room and you went down a little corridor, and then you opened up and took a right turn onto a massive green corridor. And that green corridor is called the Gallery Hall, the Gallery Hallway. And this is where all the family paintings would have been hung.
Sure.
And I'm trying to remember if they were hung there, because I cannot remember. I was so overtaken by this hallway.
Yes.
But I don't remember visually anything about this hallway. I know it sounds strange. Why don't you remember what you saw? I don't remember what I saw, so I don't remember what was hanging. I just remember feeling in that hallway a certain way.
Okay.
And at the end of this hallway, towards the end of this hallway, off to the left, is the entrance for the royal balcony for the chapel. Okay. So we went into the royal balcony area.
Yes.
Where the royalty would have sat. And down was the chapel, where the cardinals and what would have been performing services and whatnot. This hallway... And I did not know this when I was there.
This wouldn't be the haunted gallery, would it?
This is the haunted gallery hallway.
Okay.
I did not know that story when I was there.
I had the story. It's called the Screaming Queen.
Yes.
It's Catherine Howard.
Yes, it is.
She was beheaded in 1542. And after she was arrested, she broke free from her guards.
Yep.
And she ran screaming down this gallery.
Yes.
Begging for mercy from King Henry.
Because she knew the other queen that had been charged with adultery and treason, Anne Boleyn,
she lost her head.
Yeah. And Catherine knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Well, and she didn't receive her mercy.
No, she did not.
And it said that her ghost now runs down this gallery.
That's right.
To this day.
That's
through
right.
eternity, screaming for mercy.
Yes, that's right.
Boy, that'd be a fun ghost to witness, wouldn't you? Scare the living.
Oh, it's actually not fun. The visitors are reporting strange coldness, dizzying sensations.
Wow.
According to the Royal Historic Palaces, 2 different women on separate tours.
Is this the one where they fainted?
Yeah, they fainted in the exact spot of the haunted gallery on the same day in 1999. They were taking 2 different tours.
Yeah.
2 women fainted.
But when they reached that
spot, they fainted in the exact same spot.
Wow.
Okay, and then 10 years later, the gallery was redecorated. And according to a ghost tutor, Sarah, there are fewer people fainting and feeling dizzy. Now, I would have taken the tour at least 10 years, if not 20 years after this. But they feel faint, dizzy, even after new wall hangings were put up.
Yeah.
So there was a woman named Lucy, and she's a skeptic.
Yes.
She said that she even admits to feeling uneasy in that room.
Wow.
A coldness in that room.
It must be overwhelming enough that you're not going to hide it.
Right. Now, I have just heard that recently, within the last couple of years, they have taken the haunted gallery off the tours.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Yeah.
But evidently, the rumor is that has become so problematic in that area for visitors with being touched and being interacted with, that it's now a liability and a hazard, and they have taken that part off the tour, which I really hope is not true, because to be walking that gallery and to go into that royal box, that's where Anne Boleyn would have sat when Elizabeth I was baptized and christened in that chapel. That's just amazing, incredible. And to not be able to walk that hallway. Well, we're taking the girls back in a couple of years because we have family over there. It's an annual tradition. The girls always go with their moms to meet their family over there. And when I take them, I want to be able to show them that. And so I hope this isn't true.
It's open.
I hope that it's open when we go, because...
we'll just have to do another episode on that. And,
that's right. I cannot wait.
I hope to take Heather next year or two. But, I there's a lot of places I got to do, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, so I'm careful how much of this information I give. But when I went... a lot of the guys were Freemasons from that area, and there's many different lodges. Essex, Tower Lodge, which the guys from Tower Lodge we had a kind of connection with, and there was even representatives from the Grand Lodge of Spain and so forth, with the Provincial Grand Lodge of England. And anyway, one night 2 or 3 of them had made arrangements, because a lot of the beef eaters there that guard the tower happened to be brothers, and they made arrangements for me to get to tour the tower at night after closing. And that was really the ultimate thing. I mean, of course, I didn't have all my gadgets. I mean, we did have a millimeter, and it was a good time. And they took and showed us where Anne Boleyn was beheaded, and you got to do all that, and where Guy Fawkes met his end, and on and on. I mean, it's just really neat, and it's a neat place. So I hope they didn't take that off the tour, because those things is what really makes it special, especially for those that's in the paranormal community that are looking for those.
It really does. It really does, and I really hope that isn't the case.
Well, before we start our next one, we're going to take a really quick break here, and we'll be back with you shortly.
Good evening. This is Jennifer with Spirit and Ghost to Ghost podcast. Come join us at the FW Paracon, the first annual Fort Wayne Paracon, September 29th through 30th, as we kick off with Kathy Hahn, the very first ever Indiana Paracon. Come meet today's hottest paranormal superstars, Grant Wilson, Dustin Perry, Chris Williams, Rochelle Stratton, Brian Murray, and many more. You'll be able to sit down with a variety of psychics and mediums, have tarot card readings, and it's going to feature a variety of vendors offering merchandise and other experiences. You must come. If you haven't had a Paracon before, join us, please. See you there.
All right, folks, welcome back as we continue our episode tonight on Hampton Court, Henry VIII's Palace, and on Warwick Castle. We're coming back with Warwick's Castle.
So Warwick Castle, which proudly displays over 1,000 pieces of arms and armor in the Great Hall, has an extensive history spanning over 1,000 years. Warwick Castle was associated with various historical events, including the Norman conquest of England, the 100 Years' War between England and France, and the War of the Roses. It was first built as a wooden fortification in the time of William the Conqueror in 1086. Okay. Unearthly growls have been heard in the dungeon, where people have reported encountering an evil spirit said to be an elemental who manifests into human form. In other areas of the castle, physical sensations of being pushed or grabbed are experienced by visitors, as well as temperature changes. Now, in the oubliette, everybody, I think, is probably familiar with what an oubliette is, a straight shaft in the prison dungeon, right?
And in the French word, oubliette means to forget. They put people in there and would forget them. They wouldn't feed them, give them water. They would just die and waste away. Right.
So, Warwick Castle has come on my radar for another experience that we'll talk about here in a second. But in my love of history, of course, I've been recently studying the War of the Roses, and Richard Neville, otherwise known as the Kingmaker, was an Earl of Warwick. And he captured Henry VI. Henry VI. King Henry VI was captured by him and imprisoned.
Kept at Warwick,
And kept at Warwick.
Yes.
Now, I was wondering, okay, this is a king, this is royalty you have imprisoned in your castle.
Yes.
At this time, Warwick Castle really wasn't a residence. It was really a fortification. It was a stronghold, right? It wasn't the residence it is today.
Sure.
Sir Fulk Greville made it into the residence it is today. But I wondered, would the Richard have kept the king up in apartments, or would he have kept him in the dungeon? Well, there was actually an inscription found in the dungeon area, and it said, James Smith, gunner to His Majesty. So, if King Henry VI's gunner is in the dungeon,
Then he's not.
I don't know.
I don't know.
He may have been in the dungeon. He may have been in the dungeon.
Neville wanted, again, this is a time where, you killed your adversary, or they would come back and, there was no, hey, look, it was a mistake, and that, no, it didn't
And
work
Henry
that
VI
way.
was not right in the head at this
No,
point. I mean, Margaret of Anjou was pretty much taking leadership and control at this point, even though Henry was still the king. So I think that Warwick kept him in the dungeon. I don't think about the oubliette,
No,
but
I don't know.
I think
I
he
don't know
was
about
kept down in the
oubliette,
dungeon since they found that inscription.
I think there was a certain amount, when you're in the military and you're in a war situation, you're captured, or at least when it used to be in World War II and World War I, if you were an officer, you were still kept separate of the enlisted men. You were still thought of as, there was a hierarchy there, and it was, you had different quarters, and there was a different amount of respect. Now, nowadays, it isn't exactly that way, but back then there was a bit of honor to it, and I think that, I believe truthfully that would be the way. I don't know that he was in an apartment there, but a lot of times they would put them in a tower and lock them away, or they'd be in their own cell. They wouldn't be with the common prisoners.
Right. But if he's got his gunner imprisoned with him, it's almost like he was imprisoned as a servant to take care of His Majesty. And so if the inscription is in the dungeon, that leads me to say that I think both of them probably were in the dungeon. Yeah.
And the dungeons, a lot of people, the vision of dungeons is strictly the torture chambers. The torture room was separate than the dungeons. The dungeon was basically a dank, nasty jail, and not everyone was tortured. They tortured people to get them either to die or to get information.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't always done. So people have a very skewed, unfortunately due to Hollywood, a very skewed vision of what a dungeon is.
Right.
The unusual thing there is, and a lot of people don't realize it, when just like any other castle in England, when that castle was built, it originally had a church in it. And then the bishop, Church of All Saints is what it was called, in 1119, was put in by the Duke of Warwick, Henry de Beauchamp, I think Beauchamp, how he's pronounced his last name? Beauchamp put it in. And then the bishop didn't like that one bit and didn't like being there and had it removed in 1127. But my understanding is you can still, because when they were filming it on a couple of TV series, you could still see the remnants of that church, that chapel.
Oh, wow.
That was there. It's almost like Great Hall on its own. So.
Yeah. Well, another spirit, or elemental maybe, at Warwick Castle is a large black dog. And of course, it wouldn't be an English castle, English countryside without a legendary black dog, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this is thought to be attributed to Moll Boxam.
Yep.
She was a milkmaid at Warwick Castle, and they thought she was a witch. That's right.
Yeah.
She was caught stealing and was publicly punished. She was tied to the castle courtyard as punishment, and villagers would throw things at her, hit her, and that sort of thing. And so with anger and humiliation, when she broke free, she ran to the top of the Beauchamp Tower. And there she locked herself inside of a room. Castle guards tried to break down the room, but they couldn't see Moll anywhere. What was there was a black dog.
Yep.
So it is said that Moll Boxam was a witch and cursed the castle by turning into a black dog. So the guards tried to catch the dog. It ran and fell to its death in the river.
Yeah, Avon River.
Yeah, that's right, in the Avon River. And so to this day, people still claim to witness a ghostly black dog.
After the dog, she changed. It's always believed that she transformated into a Grey Lady apparition after the dog was killed.
Yeah.
That's one way of not giving up.
Right.
If you're going to be a spirit, you want to hang in there and keep your resolve, and that's true English resolve right there.
Right.
this castle, and it's been on I don't know how many different specials.
I was trying to equate it with something here in the United States.
There was one show that was made with United States actors, but it wasn't released here. It was released on HETV in England, and Jeff Behringer was involved, and and my mind is freaking out here. The gentleman who is has the museum, John, the Haunted Collector. John had the TV series, The Haunted Collector.
John Zappis?
Yeah, thank you, John Zappis. They went in together to do this program, and they did a whole series and investigation, but we never got to see it. And I've seen parts of it, but it aired on HETV over there. And then let's see here, Most Haunted.
Yep, Most Haunted's been there. Yep,
Yeah,
and a bunch of other BBC ghost shows, ghost groups have been there.
Yeah.
You can look up YouTube and you can see all of their investigations and whatnot.
I thought that Jason and them had been there when they did the Ghost Hunter or TAPS International.
No.
Nope, but they weren't.
They've never been.
No.
Yeah.
Well, the other big castle over there that catches a lot of fame is Chillingham.
Yes.
And but I know a lot have been to it as well. But it was surprising that not very many American groups, I mean, well, other than, we're talking about, other than the previously mentioned, have been over there and not very much put on U.S. TV over it.
Right,
so,
right.
Most of the things I found when I researched was mainly like documentary shows on the history of the castle.
Yes. And Warwick Castle is very attached to its ghosts.
Oh,
it's
yes.
right on the website. Everything, everything
Yes.
about this that we found is pretty much directly from Warwick Castle. The most famous ghost at Warwick, not that I can find an instance of him being seen, but Sir Falk Greville.
Oh, yes.
Sir Falk Greville was granted Warwick Castle by King James I in 1604. And at that point, it had been unoccupied for 14 years. It was kind of in a ruinous state. He was a poet, a playwright, a very rich and influential man, and he converted Warwick Castle into the residence that it became.
Yes.
He never married, and he never had any children.
No descendants.
No descendants. So he left his castle to his cousin.
Yeah.
Kind of an adopted son.
Yes.
But he had made provision for his servant, Ralph Haywood, and Haywood did not like...
No,
he wasn't having it.
Provision.
He wanted more.
He was mad. And so, in a fit of rage, he stabbed Sir Falk Greville while he was helping him dress in his London home. Haywood then slit his own throat because he was so horrified about what he had done. He died immediately. Sir Greville did not die immediately. He died a month later in
death.
agony because the surgeon insisted on packing the wound with mutton fat.
Yeah.
Because he thought that a fresh inclusion of healthy tissue would help.
Regenerate that, yeah.
He was wrong.
Well, he kept him alive a month, but I mean, that had to be a horrible way to... Somewhere I saw an inscription he done and something about how death must like blood because, the fact that she enjoyed seeing that much of it before the end finally comes. I mean, this guy was really in bad shape.
Yeah, he was. He was brought back to Warwick Castle, and his tomb is there nearby at St. Mary's Church. It says that his ghost returns to walk the castle.
But you don't see instance of it.
Not really. I mean, there are witnesses who report catching fleeting glimpses, but there's never a story. This was Sir Greville, and so much has happened here that really wasn't ever recorded and put down properly.
Yes.
And it wasn't until the late 20th century, the late 1900s, when one of the descendants, Francis, he had come to America. He was born in 1911, I think.
Yes.
And ended up dying in 1987, I think. He had come to America to try and become an actor in Hollywood and whatnot, and it didn't work. So then he ended up going back. And it wasn't until he got back and tried to keep the estate going and running that these stories of the hauntings started coming out. And the one tower was nicknamed the Ghost Tower because of what he had said, and
Yeah.
books were written and things like that. So people were like, well, this is just all made up to bring in revenue for the
Sure.
estate. There's nothing really behind
what
this,
better
right?
would be a revenue getter than,
Exactly. They just say you
Haunted-
have a haunted castle, right? Especially in England.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Because
But-
not every castle is haunted in England, but if you get lucky enough to have one, you become very famous very rapidly.
Exactly. So, there were mention of some things that happened in the late 1800s that kind of put a different spin on things. So maybe we should break that down a little bit.
Well, before we get into that real quick, I know that there was claims, and these are not documented 100%, so I don't know, but they claim that Grayville came back and walked his chambers. That's what I had always heard.
Ah, okay.
And also I heard about a severed body that walked, which there was some rumor because of the fact he had a stab wound to the abdominal region, that there was a severed body that walked around the lower level. But the only problem is you have a dungeon there. There was people killed in the
Right.
dungeon. This
right.
thing was involved in so many wars, and you had soldiers
1,000-year history.
Anybody could have been severed
could be
into by a cannonball, for that matter. So it doesn't really say. I don't want to get too far ahead of where you're going with this, but did you have you read the story about the servant girl and the baby?
No.
Oh, you haven't read that? Okay, well,
No, I
on
don't
the
know
lower
that.
level, apparently the master of the house, the butler, like we were talking about before, had sexual relations with this servant girl. They believed her name was Rose or Roseanne, but there's no name actually on file. But because she became pregnant, now she was probably 13, 15, something like that. When she became pregnant, she had the baby in secrecy. Once he found out about it, he had her walled up in the lower level with the baby.
Oh, wow.
And they claim that you can still hear her crying and sobbing and the baby crying. Now, this again, the lower level is going into the level before you get into the kitchen area.
Mm-hmm.
And they claim that they can get that. That was one of the things that I found fascinating as I went through this thing. The more things I dug, the more interesting things popped up.
Oh, so much.
Oh, yeah.
So much. There's so much to get through with these seances that happen.
Well, and real quickly, another interesting factor of this was there's a ghost, but they don't really say where he appears. But an Edward Disney. Did you read anything about that?
Edward Disney?
Yep. In 1642, was locked at Warwick's Castle dungeon during the Battle of Edge Hill in the Civil War. They determined that, and during the 1940s, Walt Disney himself came over to England to try to trace his relation. Turns out that they're pretty sure this gentleman was related to Walt Disney.
Wow.
And he discovered that, supposedly, or at least it was reported that he discovered that while he was over there. He believed that believed that his family was from that area. But Norton Disney was actually his relative and was fighting for King Charles at the time. So he actually doodled graffiti on the wall. And it can be found in the Castle Royal, Gaol, which I believe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I could be wrong. It's Groll. And it's included in the entry price, so you have to pay extra when you want to see his Disney's art.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting when I was going through all of this. But the servant girl came up, and it's the undercroft. I said under area. It's undercroft area of the castle. And the girl was believed to be 14, somewhere, like I said, 13, 14,
Yeah,
15.
that's a common story. I hear that in quite a lot of the manor houses and the castles throughout England. That story is very prevalent. And I think that there's one even in Ireland that a group that I watch went to, and they've got the same story there, yeah. So the story that brought Warwick Castle really to the forefront for me was last year at Michigan Paracon.
Yes.
When M.J. Dixon, she's a paranormal investigator and spiritual medium from England. She lives in England. She's actually from South Africa. She was telling the story of one of her visits to Warwick Castle. I think she lives in Warwickshire.
That was neat. Yeah.
So she was visiting the Warwick Castle, the Kenilworth room, and it's supposed that a specter of a little girl is said to lurk there. And the little girl is there because of a seance that happened by, I told you Aleister Crowley was going to make an appearance this episode.
Yes.
By Aleister Crowley. That they opened a portal. Now, whether this little girl, I think, was actually summoned by another medium that was there before Aleister Crowley. Some put Aleister Crowley as the responsible party, and others put this other medium
This other
as...
guy was a church vicar, I believe.
He was an archdeacon. He was a spiritualist from South Africa, which is what caught MJ's attention.
And boy, was he a showman.
Yeah, he actually really was. I just listened to a podcast earlier today before coming over, and the information on him was really astounding and quite fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
But because MJ was reading the plaque there in the Kenilworth room, she wanted to take a picture of the plaque so she could then take it home and have that story there so she could learn more about the Archdeacon Colley, I think, Colley,
yes.
Yeah. So she snaps a picture of the plaque, and if any of you guys have taken a picture of plaques when you guys were on vacation, we do it all the time, so we can then read it a little bit further later.
On, yeah.
So these plaques are kind of reflective, so you can kind of see the backdrop behind her, all the walls of windows and everything behind her. And there is a figure standing next to the window behind her. But MJ was alone in this area when she took this.
Wow.
And there aren't very many visitors around that area, she said. And so when she got home, she was reading the plaque, and that's when she noticed the figure. Mm-hmm. Well, she thought, okay, it's got to be one of the wax figures from the room that got caught in the reflection. But she couldn't remember any models being in that room.
Yes.
So she called the castle.
Yes.
And she said, can you guys review the security cameras? Because I got a weird photo. Was anyone else in the room with me? Is there a wax figure back there that I forgot about?
Yeah.
And the security footage
no wax figure.
Shows nothing. She is in that room alone. Now, I don't want to post a picture on the Facebook page because it's MJ's photo.
Sure.
I was been trying to reach out to MJ, but it's hard to get messages through Facebook to Europe right now. It will not let me message her. But I'm trying to get permission to put that on our Facebook page.
Well, and some people are just busy. You know, I converse
she
back
has
and
got
forth. And
so much going on. She's actually coming in July to a Paracon here in the States. She'll be in the Paracon in Michigan in August.
Yeah.
And then there's a new Paracon. I think it's her Paracon, Sage Paranormal, is hosting a Paracon at Belgrove Plantation in September. The same day we're going to be up in Fort Wayne. The same weekend we're in Fort Wayne. She's going to be in Virginia at another Paracon. And she has something else coming out in October. I know nothing about it, but it's supposed to be a new program coming. So she's been very, very busy. But you'll have to look it up and just put in Warwick Castle ghost photo, and her photo pops up, and it's pretty remarkable. So that got me started in this.
It's hard sometimes. Those people have a heck of when they're not filming, they have a heck of a road schedule. You know, Dave Schrader and I talk occasionally by instant messenger, but it's a lot of time a 3-day delay before he gets back with me. And there's several people I made friends with in the cryptozoology world because we see them. You know, we see them at Paracons, and you know we cut up, and they always remember me. We come in, and I talk to a couple that way, and they contact me and say, hey, this is a better email, and even then it's a day or so because they're on the road. I usually ask them, hey, I'm going here. Where are you going to be? And a lot of times they may be out west or north, but there is quite a circuit, so it is hard to get a hold of. So
so if she gets back with me this week, we'll put that up on our Facebook page. If she doesn't, then just go ahead and Google that because it's all over the place. I just don't feel like using it without permission for copyright and all that stuff.
We try to do our best journalism. Did you get to look at anything about the Archdeacon or research on it?
I did not do any research on the Archdeacon Colley, but
you mean the coffin in the glass?
I do know about that. I do know about it, and I also know that he's very famous for a trumpet that he was pictured carrying around. And then at his church or his abbey or his chapel.
Rectory of Stockton Church.
He had a speaker system installed. Outside. And any good little kids that came up and quoted a Bible verse or a scripture piece would then get a piece of candy come down the tube to them.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I didn't know about that.
It was a speaker system, and they could speak into the little tube, and the sound would carry up to him. And if he heard a scripture or a Bible verse or something pleasant come up, they would get rewarded with a little treat. It didn't say what happens if naughty little boys came up.
Yeah.
They might have gotten blasted with the trumpet. I don't know, right?
That's
Well,
what you get.
you know, this is such a colorful character when I got looking into it. Now, when the seances, was Crowley in the last seance?
So, yes.
The second one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, you know, as we said, this castle is so old, you know, and
Yes.
there was the son of Anne, the fourth Countess of Warwick.
Yes.
And he has been noted in saying in a biography he wrote, in a book he wrote, that his mother always complained about spirits.
Yes.
And that she would move rooms constantly because she was just inundated with all the noises and the spirits.
Remind you of
right?
anything in particular in the U.S.? Reminds me of Winchester Mansion.
Oh.
And Sarah Winchester.
Yeah.
She moved rooms, and she always, you know, and I kind of read some of that. I was trying to find his name.
Well, during this time...
Wouldn't that be Brooke? Lord
Yeah,
Brooke?
Lord Brooke.
Yeah,
Lord Brooke,
yeah.
yes.
During this time is when the Fox sisters were really popular
Oh, yeah.
over here in the States.
So-
and spiritualism was really
And they
taking
did
off.
a lot of automatic writing.
A lot of automatic
Yeah.
writing. A lot of seances happened. It was the thing. It was the Victorian thing to do.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, in this little tell-all that the son was doing, he was like, I've never seen anything myself, but Mom says that she sees these specters all the time, and I hope these seances are giving her what she wants, kind of poo-pooing it.
Yeah.
There really wasn't ever any proof what happened with these seances, really.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Deacon Conley came with Daisy, or with Anne, the fourth
Yes.
Countess, and Aleister Crowley came at Daisy's invitation. She was the fifth Countess of Warwick.
Yeah.
And she was part of the Marlborough Society, which was a very high set
Yes.
class. And so she was rubbing elbows with Prince Edward, Victoria's,
Prince Edward, yes.
Victoria's
Yeah,
son, who then
yeah.
became king, right?
Yes.
So she was known to run in those circles very high up. And she is the one who had Aleister Crowley come in. And that is believed when the portal then opened.
Yes.
But we didn't have any written down evidence of these seances, just that
No,
they happened.
just the notes.
It wasn't
And those
until
were found, what, in the assessor's office?
in 2018
Yeah.
by a PhD student.
Mm-hmm.
He was going through to see if he could find, digging deeper. He went into the bills and receipts. You know,
Sure.
nobody's interested in
No,
renovations and what it costs and I want this
But you'd be
wallpaper and
surprised
not that
what
wallpaper.
history that will tell you, though.
So that's
about
where he was
parties
digging.
And how much they cost and everything else.
Yeah, that's where he was digging. And in amongst those bills were 2 sealed envelopes.
Yes.
And I guess there may be automatic writing from the seances.
Yeah, I saw the picture, and they were in a leather envelope. When they opened it up, there were 2 sealed envelopes, and
Yeah.
each one was on the different seance. Now, I don't remember if it had the I know a lot of it was definition of you know what was in the seance, what happened during the seance. So it all right, folks, we're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back to Ghost to Ghost. Tonight's subject, we're talking about Warwick Castle and the Hampton Court, King Henry's Palace. We were just starting to talk about the seances done at Warwick Castle.
Yeah, so the seances are quite convoluted and a little bit difficult to follow sometimes. So we're just going to brush over it a little bit. The first one is written in pencil, and it's a very loose hand, which is possibly the Countess's hand.
Yes.
Now
This would have been the 4th Countess then.
No. This would have been Daisy, I
the 5th
believe.
Countess, okay.
Like I said, it's confusing, but I think this is Daisy. I think this
Okay.
is in Daisy's paperwork.
Okay.
I could be wrong. It could have been Anne's paperwork, now that I say that.
Yeah, that's okay. You're just trying to figure where we're
But
at there.
yeah, it is very complex. It's kind of hard to follow. But they think that it exhibits spirit writing or automatic writing.
Yes.
And so, of course, everybody knows this is where an individual is encouraged to sit and just let the words channel and flow from the spirit world and onto the paper that's being written. Both the transcripts center around the ghost of a servant called
Yes.
Edward Jameson. And it seems that he is the one to blame for creating the noises in the castle.
Yes.
Again, I think it's probably more than him, because in some of the writings, it does indicate that he is one of several.
Yes.
Okay. So the transcript explains that he, as a live person, human, had stolen something from the household and has hidden it.
Okay.
And he says he's assisted in making the noises by 2 other spirits, at least 2 others. The second transcript is in a different hand, and it captures an attempt at a conversation. So it's almost like they're conversing. And when you read through it, there's little shorthand, which makes it really hard to read, but it's kind of like who is the person talking that would indicate who the person talking is.
And the second one we know for sure Alice Crowley was at, we believe.
We believe, but I'm not positive Alice Crowley was at these, but we don't know.
Yes.
We know that he was there, though, and we know that he supposedly opened the portal.
Yes.
So the second transcript is the conversation through a medium. So that could have been Aleister Crowley as the medium. Yeah. Various questions were put to the ghost, and other ghostly servants appear, including Sarah Kitchener and Richard Lay. Once more, attempts are made to encourage the spirit of Edward Jameson to give up the secret, the location where it's stolen, the hidden item somewhere in the castle's rooms.
Yes.
So the Countess is accompanied by her friend Lady Ashburton, one of Anne's closest confidants. They call her Lady Ash. Also, her son Lord Brooke was there. He seemed to have visited several bedrooms in order to find out which room contained the secret. And there was a small map drawn on the back of the sheet that shows what must have been a set of rooms in the upstairs furthest western part of the castle.
Yes.
Which are now where the castle's finance and general manager's office are, and they're inaccessible to the public. So don't think you're going to go to Warwick Castle and find the secret hidden, because it's probably not open to you.
And how many rooms did we decide that King Edward or King Henry's palace had?
King Henry's palace was upward of 1,600.
Yeah, so the Warwick Castle is fairly large.
Yeah.
Now, I have never been to it. That was another site. Now, like I said, when I go back, it's on my list of things. But
it's on my list now.
Yeah, I mean, but there's probably a horrific amount of rooms. He could have hid that anywhere.
Right. And of course, these are the only 2 records of the seances we found. So it's possible that those guys found it.
Oh yeah.
And we just don't know they found it. So it could have already been claimed and taken care of.
Very well. Could be.
So it's clear that efforts were made to encourage Warwick Castle's ghost to refrain from bothering the Victorian owners, and Anne lived in an age where it was a growing interest in spiritualism. So seances were a popular pastime for them. It was nothing new. So the fact that there isn't a whole lot of documentation isn't surprising.
No, it's not surprising.
Not surprising.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So,
but if you wanted, we could read through these transcripts real quick. It's kind of difficult and a little bit hard to understand.
Well, I think our listeners would like to hear it. So let's, if you don't care and you don't mind,
I don't mind.
Believe it or not, of course, we at Ghost try to run the scripts, and we don't stay right on them. We kind of bounce around. That's kind of the fun of being just a natural conversation. The problem is, the guy in charge of making all the copies didn't make me a copy. That guy would be me. So you two both have transcripts. I don't. So go ahead and I'll just listen as we go.
Okay. So, document 1. Now, the PhD student who found this in 2018, when he found this, he almost had a little of an aha moment, because he's like,
oh, yeah.
Oh, wait. This is me, because it starts, leave all to the future research. He's like, I was meant to find this, right?
It's a lottery.
That's right. So, leave all to the future research. The power at work is not that of the mortals of the castle of here. The spirit of me, called Edward Jameson, is one of these who now haunt the place. His, ... illegible, is low. The ment he possesses of hearing words, seeing and thought, and being in power, as a spirit, be read, R-E-D, with a material atmosphere. I not be him to move objects of material, ... illegible, to create noises. He can be defeated in his purpose by the higher powers of spirits. He is aided by 2 men spirits in a little ... illegible.
Yes.
These do to mediums be servant, whose atmosphere is made use of for the purpose of additional power. One is getting weakened light, illegible. The course to adopt is to search the place and prove that no material forms can do what is known is done. Then to test the spirit forces and overcome these by the higher a blank blank illegible of prayer and spirit aid. Signed, Scariot.
Wow.
Now, I heard that they actually think that was a translation, and it actually should be Harriet.
Oh, okay.
So maybe there was
I
someone
thought maybe
there,
it's
but
a
they
spirit
named
guide or
Harriet.
something maybe they were using.
No,
Because they let them do
that S later on is almost like a shorthand for who is speaking or who is present.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Edward Jameson.
Mm-hmm.
Was he a servant in the palace? We don't know.
No one says either.
No, but there is an Edward Jameson that was born in the area.
Yes.
Okay, prior to this. And it's possible that his station and his location of birth could have put him as a servant at Warwick Castle.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So there is somebody of that name that would have been of that class that could have possibly resided in the castle. So, document 2 is much more confusing if the first one wasn't confusing enough, right? So not only are we dealing with Old English, not really Old English, because it's not really Old English. That was much more 1600s.
Not as bad as it was prior.
Not as bad as
still,
the Old English, right? But there was definitely a different way of speaking.
Sure.
Plus, with automatic writing, you're not getting every word, and not every word is legible on these transcripts that we found. They're really hard to decipher.
And you wonder who's making the notes. They're doing it in low light. We're talking about a seance. And the way I understand it, the seances were conducted with a talking board, except for the ones Crowley was at. Now, Crowley, we all know, would give information through his trances or sleep that he would do, henceforth the sleeping prophet. And so, it's quite possible that, some of this may have been just transcribed by somebody just sitting in the dark and doing the best he could.
Right. Or it could have been an automatic writing session where the writer is blindfolded and they're just writing.
Yeah.
And
then later on it was transcribed again.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. And, this isn't a day of big pens and notebooks. I mean, we're dealing with parchment and ink
quill,
pens.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So, and the second one, though, is more of a shorthanded, written down of a conversation. So it's much more broken up.
Sure.
So here we go. Document 2 starts. A spirit much patient will on the truth write. Next. Have seen I spirits then? Are partially undeveloped? Can you suggest anything? If Jameson called or could, suggested by wishes, would be given yes. If he's is it to Colonel Drayson, would be just. Yes. Is she times many mediums? Yes. James? No. Could he open his mind to somebody, maybe Lady A? So it could be Lady Ashburton, okay, or Lady Ash. Make material noises? Yes. Could she, by praying for them, set them free? Perhaps. Have mortals anything to do with it? No. Are the servants responsible for their share? No. Jameson was servant there in this country. He stole their goods and wishes to show where it is hidden to beautiful something.
Yes.
Maybe Lady Ashbury. It's been suggested that maybe the spirit of James took a liking to Lady Ashburton because she comes up a lot.
He was sweet on her.
Yes, yes. So maybe he just wanted to stay and talk, right?
Sure.
James's servants, not plate or money or deeds. So he's saying he didn't steal jewelry or wealth.
Yes.
So what did he steal? I don't know. Not starved or valet or footman, 2 spirits and men. And then it says 5V. Not Jameson's can give 5 names. But if Ash calls 5 alphabet. So I can't tell you, but if Lady Ashburton wants to ask me, maybe I'll give you 5 alphabets, right? So then he names Richard Lay and Sarah Kitchener as the 2 servants that are with him in the spirit world. It was a footman who did it, and 5 spirits influenced them. Did it begin in her room, near her room? Yes. Will you give 5 names of footmen? And then he says John. And then he says Richard Lay, not one of the household, not a friend and visitor. Yeah. Sarah Kitchener was a servant in this century. Yes. Will E. Jameson never be quiet till he has told his secret? No. Will he tell it by Ash? Yes. So I'll tell Lady Ashburton where it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. If she and Lady W sit together, will he tell it? If sit together in London, will he tell it? No. So only here. You
only
can't
at
do
the castle.
Yeah, I'm not going to London to your seances in London. Must it be at Warwick Castle? Yes. Could Colonel help? No. Is Lady A? Yes. Would they be quiet now after if E.J. had told his secret? S. They sit together just as we are doing, in her room. Not where she is now? In the little sitting room now used by her? No.
Yes.
On S floor, in which Lady room is? Is it in the little room in which she is now? No. In large room where the black and ivory bed is, at the end of passage? Yes. If he sat alone? No. If she and Lady B together called E.J. tell it? Yes. But better if Lady A? Yes.
Yes.
And those are the transcripts.
That's pretty interesting, though. Yeah, it showed a clear shine, and I mean, but still, it makes you wonder. It's a neat place, and I think this was a great research project, and I think it made for a wonderful episode. So I want to thank you for doing all the hard work on that. So.
You brought some to the table too. Yeah. I loved it.
It's good. So, well, we're going to take a real quick commercial break, and we'll be right back after this messages.
Come meet today's hottest paranormal superstars. Enjoy hearing from them about their journeys on the road and in the field. You'll also see some vendors offering their wares and some tarot readers and other psychics, and have fun. Thank you, and we'll hope to see you there.
All right, folks, welcome back to Ghost. Tonight's episode was on the Hampton Court, Henry VIII's Palace, and Warwick Castle. That's the conclusion for tonight's episode of Ghost to Ghost. We hope you enjoyed this evening's episode. The episode of Ghost to Ghost written by Jennifer Verne, and it's now time for a ghost story of the day, so stay tuned.
So today's ghost story of the day is going to be a little nod to M.J. Dickinson. If you look her up on YouTube, look for a video that she does about the rollright stones and its spiritual presences and feeling. It's really a neat little YouTube thing that I enjoyed. So this is The Witch of Wookie Caves from A Ghost Today by Maureen Wood and Ron Kolick. Wookie Hole, England. In Wookie Caves is an extensive cave system located near the village of Wookie Hole in Somerset, England. Neanderthals, Celts, Romans, and a ghost or two have inhabited it over the past 50,000 years. It is now a renowned tourist attraction, with ghosts and all enticing nearly 25,000 people a year. When exploring its caverns, visitors have reported seeing the ghost of a deceased cave explorer in 1949, and the spirit of a nameless little boy who wanders the tunnels and passageways. However, the most famous denizen of the caves is the witch. Back in the 1700s, an old woman lived in the cave with some goats. The villagers blamed the recluse for all the ills that beset the village. Heeding their complaints, the abbot of Glastonbury, Father Bernard, was sent to exorcise the witch. As the story goes, the priest blessed the water in the cave and then began sprinkling it about. The witch of the Wookiee caves challenged the priest. Standing his ground, he asked her to repent. His request was spurned, and a battle of wills ensued. Finally, Father Bernard doused her with holy water. The wicked witch screeched, her body stiffened, and she slowly turned to stone. In the story of the Wookiee caves, a legend? Maybe yes, maybe no. In 1912, seasoned cave explorer Herbert Bloch discovered the skeletal remains of several goats and an old woman.
Thanks for listening to Ghost to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air, or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd., all rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.